Hello, everybody, and welcome to GCRE, the new home of commercial real estate TV. Today, we have quite an entertaining guest called Michael Hetchkop, who deals with lease forensics in the commercial real estate world. Quite an interesting topic, and one that we have never seen or heard about, or certainly myself have never heard about. It's going to be quite an interesting conversation, so brace yourself for the ride. Michael, hi, how are you this morning?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm doing well. First, everybody excuse the background, of course, like everybody else in the world. I'm working from home.
Okay, that's okay. I don't think much people are bothered about that. I just said you the guy is going to be quite an interesting call today. The lease forensics expert, certainly that I believe you are.
Yes.
I've always dealt with forensics experts, but in a criminal manner because my background was with the government services.
Right.
So quite intrigued to hear this morning a little bit about what it is you do in this world and tell people a little bit. I know when we spoke originally, what you told me about it was very fascinating. And I think a lot of people probably aren't aware of what this is all about or this actually exists. So, Michael, why don't you take a few minutes and just kind of tell us a little bit about who you are, what it is you do, and what is a lease forensics person?
Okay, great. Thank you, Gavin. For the last 30 years, I've been reading leases and determining what expenses should or should not be passed through to tenants. Also reading leases to determine what language works for tenants. As you can tell, I'm with CRESA, who's a global commercial real estate company that represents only tenants. So I come from the tenant side. So what's interesting about today is there are going to be a lot of changes in buildings. There have already been, and there will continue to be changes as we continue through this, COVID era. And it's my belief that tenants need to pay a lot of attention to what costs are going to be on their side of the ledger versus the landlords. A little bit about me, though, before I forget, is I'm a CPA, I'm an MBA, and I'm also an adjunct professor at Georgetown University in the Masters of Real Estate program. So I think I've been at this a long time and read thousands of leases and actually enjoy doing that.
That's quite an interesting introduction and quite an entertaining one so far already. Michael, so because you've obviously looked at a lot of leases and considering there's a pandemic going on right now, is there anything that people should be looking at right now in the leases?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you first, when this whole pandemic started, everybody ran to their force majeure paragraph in the lease, which referred to obligations that didn't have to be made due to acts of fire, God, government authorities. But I think we quickly all realized that it really doesn't apply or really doesn't mention the pandemic. And further, at the end of that force majeure paragraph, it typically says that in the event that the item, such as a pandemic, is not listed, you're not allowed to excuse rent obligations. So that was probably the first place that everybody went to, and I think people still looking at that, but I think that that's pretty much been decided that for the most cases it won't work.
Do you think a lot of people are aware of this, Michael? Because I mean, this was like the first time I ever heard of something called a lease forensics. Do you think this is well known in the commercial real estate world for the people who are very experienced in it, but also the people who are viewers, and they're probably looking to get into this? Is this something that they should be aware of? Which, of course, the answer is yes. But like,
Right.
how would they kind of know about this a little bit more?
Sure. I always say that lease forensics is an acquired taste. You have to want to read hundreds and hundreds of leases a year. And I will tell you that there are very few of us, both in the United States and internationally. So we're a different breed. You have to, like I said, pay a lot of attention to the leases. You have to understand how buildings operate. I've also been on the project management side, so that gives me a little bit more of an idea as to how a building should operate. Number of personnel, engineers, contracts. So it takes some time, and there's a little bit of what I call when I bring staff along. I believe that there's some instinct here to try to realize when you're reading something that it doesn't just quite make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite a very technical area, and one should always seek advice
Yeah.
when looking at this. So, is this something that lawyers normally look after when they're looking at leases, or is it a specific lawyer they need to look at, or is it somebody like yourself they need to come to?
Well, if you have a good real estate lawyer, they can help. I've done expert witness work when it comes to this, so I think that it's good to team up. You'll find that when you read a lease or an LOI, a lot of things are subjective, and you could read things quite differently than perhaps someone else will. So I certainly think a good real estate lawyer, a lease forensics person, and the broker getting together is a good way to start this, to figure out what was the intent of the language.
Yeah, I mean, so with this pandemic happening right now, and everybody's talking about it, including ourselves. I mean, is this something that has been written into leases before, or is it like insurance where you couldn't foresee this? So insurance companies, people can't claim on it. Is this something that is already written into contracts usually, or I mean, a global pandemic, will
Right.
collapses. I mean, nobody sees this coming, but
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of leases probably don't facilitate these types of things.
You're exactly right. I have yet to see a lease that truly mentioned global pandemic. So
Yeah.
this is, so it would be extremely rare for someone to have had the foresight to put that in. So it's not there. Will it be there in the future? I know that there's been resistance. I know that lawyers have tried to put this language in, and I believe for the most part, it's been a struggle to get landlords to agree to it. Some of the language, Gavin, that I have seen with some success is talking about the pandemic in regards to the commencement of the lease, as far
Yeah.
as what date it actually starts. If there's some landlord delays due to build out due to the pandemic. So that I've seen some of that language, and there's been some success in that regard.
Okay, cool. I got a question for you.
Mhm.
It came in from a viewer, potential viewer, and they asked, what should people know about their leases during this pandemic, if anything?
Okay, great, thank you, Gavin. You're asking me perfect questions, and I appreciate it. Um, I strongly urge everybody to go back, take that lease document out that they might have negotiated 3, 5, 7, 10 years ago, and start reading it again. I often find that after a lease is negotiated, the tenants, and brokers are all pretty excited about the whole process. We've done it. It's 4, 6, 8, 10 months, and that lease goes into a drawer and is only taken out, when needed, perhaps for an extension or some kind of insurance issue. And I do
Mhm.
want to get into that for a second, Gavin.
Yeah.
There's also been a lot of talk about business interruption insurance and whether
Yeah.
that will work during the pandemic. What I'm hearing also about that is, that's typically for a casualty, but I am hearing tenants go in to try to make business insurance claims. So the success of that, we'll see, in the court system. And of course, we know now the court system is not operating 100%. So we may not see
Yeah.
something about that for quite a while.
So you think it's going to take probably what, 6 months, a year down the line for people to actually start realizing, oh crap, this was not in my lease. What the heck do we do? And then let's go call Michael Hetchkop and say, hey, Michael, can you help us?
Right. Yes, people are going to realize that, and they are going to be saying, just as you mentioned, it's not in there. What my team and I have analysts with me. What we've been doing is trying to find the best language. We've been talking to our brokers all across the country and the world and saying, what are you seeing? Plus, I'm speaking to
Mhm.
countless attorneys. What type of language is acceptable? What type of language are you trying to put in? So I do strongly urge tenants, when they're dealing with their broker and attorney and hopefully the lease forensics person, to be asking the question, what language should I add? Because I'll pretty much guarantee that whatever lease they're currently in, it's not in there. So that's where, you have to be a little bit careful. You may get tenants who are looking to get some rent concessions, and then they'll simply go for an amendment to the lease.
Yeah.
So you need to be careful there as well, because you may want to put some language in that amendment so that you can protect yourself on a going forward basis as well.
Yeah. So considering, nobody was prepared for this, what do you think the leasing or the lease rule or the lease forensics rule is going to look like after this? Do you think it's going to have a huge influx of demand for this as people kind of become more aware of it? And is this going to kind of lead the way for more unforeseen things that is going to come in the future? I was told once upon a time, about a few days ago, from a broker I was speaking, he goes, I think the next thing we're going to hear is alien invasion. Are we going to be insured for that? So, I mean, what do you see the lease forensics rule is going to look like after this?
Yeah, you must be talking to the same broker, because I did have a broker speak to me last week and say the exact same thing. Aliens will be next. How do we protect our tenant?
Right. Yes.
I think that next year could very well be the busiest year I've ever had. I think that, tenants, it's going to be very hard for a tenant to understand from the statement they receive from the landlord what measures have been taken to try to deal with the virus, and what measures have been taken that the tenant should pay for or that the landlord should pay for. We have these costs in a lease, and there's a couple of different buckets. One of them is the rent, and you see your rent, and your rent goes up 3%. And if it starts at $30, it's $30.90, et cetera, and it compounds itself. But then you have this paragraph in the lease that says you will pay operating expenses over a base year that's determined in the deal. So the base year itself, the expenses that are going to be passed through are going to be, in my opinion, very, very different. And I think that every tenant is going to want to know, what is it that I'm paying for in the end? I'm already having tenants call me up and say, how do I deal with this now? And I'm recommending that they talk to their landlords and ask them, what is it that they're doing in the building, so we could prepare ourselves.
What actually brings me to my next question I was going to ask you, what is the legal standing of tenants now who actually never knew this existed, or what will be their stance going forward? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of landlords who want their money and a lot of tenants who are saying, well, hey, we can't pay because, we haven't even used the building. Like, what will be the legal standings of these tenants and landlords you see going forward?
Great question. In the business of operating expense pass-throughs, which I think is going to be the one where people are going to be questioning most, it's really pay now, complain later. In most leases, it'll say that you can audit the landlord's books. However, you have to not be in default. So it makes sense there. I mean, unless it's something that is such a large amount that it's worth taking a look at before you pay it. But a lease should have proper lease audit language. And that may be something on a going forward basis the tenants are going to want to pay more attention to. A lot of times it says in a lease, if I get a statement from a landlord and I don't object within 30 days, it's deemed accepted. And that, to me, of course, is definitely not acceptable. So tenants may want to change that to 60, 90 days. And, they may also want to, and this is something that Gavin and I am, talking to all of our clients very strongly about, is making sure that they ask for detailed line item statements. Most landlords don't give you enough information to figure out what's happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, would they need to get a lawyer involved in this, or would they need somebody like yourself or your services? How would you be able to help them with this, navigate it?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, I think it's a good time to team up. Make sure that, the lawyer has, and of course, hopefully looked at the previous deal or looked at the letter of intent. It's also a good idea to, I believe, and we do this as a matter of course, to write a much stronger letter of intent. You'll see a lot of letters of intent out there when they're for deals that may be, 4 or 5 pages. I think ours tend to run 15 or so, but, it may seem funny, but, if you address this item up front, it provides for, less less aggravation going forward. So again, I just say team up, but I definitely would stress that you should have somebody on the forensic side so they know what's gone wrong in the past.
Yeah, because I mean, this is a topic that you don't hear a lot. You hear a lot from the brokers, you hear a lot from the legals, the finance side, but nobody talks about the intricacies of your leases and what it entails. So I think this is really good. And I think this show with you today is actually going to open up a lot of people to the hidden secrets of their, or hidden unknowns of their leases that they weren't aware of. So I think that's a very, very good point. What do you see post-pandemic COVID-19? Like, how do you see this is going to leave the whole industry going forward? Like, what is your predictions for it, do you think?
Well, from the standpoint of what you're hearing in the market, you hear that everybody's going to downsize and telework. I've been around a long time. I think that things kind of cycle. I think we'll see maybe a 12, 18, 24 month real surge on teleworking. And then you'll get people back into the office, so, occupancy will increase. So tenants will be looking at their space and saying, well, maybe now I need some more space because I do need to bring my people back into the office. I do want to, Gavin, before I forget, if you don't mind, just as I talked about a couple of measures that landlords are going to take. So I'll just go over just a handful quickly.
Sure.
There's going to be HVAC upgrades. We know there's going to be additional cleaning protocols, sanitization stations. You're likely to see some thermal scanners in buildings. You may see storage lockers because people are coming off of mass transportation, so they can take their coat. So, going forward, not only are we going to see a lot of things going on with the space, we're going to see a lot of changes in the building. I don't think this is going to end. I think from now going forward, we're going to want to take every precaution for any potential post-COVID virus that may come along.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of industries also, or I should say sectors that are going to benefit from this. And maybe that's a bad way to put it, but as you said, HVAC is going to have to come in. There's a lot of cleaning services, a lot of different kind of categories that people never thought about is going to be required for this. And kind of sum it up really, like, do you have any kind of 2 or 3 pointers for people to consider going forward that you can leave them with?
Okay, absolutely. And this is what I say every single day. And I'll repeat it again, and I'm sorry to do that, but take that lease out and read it. Okay, read the entire lease. Of course, not just the force majeure and insurance, but read the entire lease to see what rights you have. Also, talk to your landlord. You want to know, like I said earlier, your landlord should have a back to work plan. They should be talking to you. There should be webinars going on. There should be a document, so you know what changes are going to be happening in the building. And then, as I mentioned, and I'm sorry to do this yet again, get those detailed line item buildings. Get your 17, 18, 19 detailed line items. So this way, when next year, when we get the operating expenses, we have something to compare to. If we just get a statement with an amount paid and you ask me, is it right? It's going to be very difficult if I have no prior history. So please get that history.
What about enforcement side of this? How do you see this going? I mean, this is a question I forgot to ask you, and I was thinking about it as we were talking, because you deal on the enforcement side as well. Like, how do you see this is going to be a backlash on landlords, certainly, I think, is going to come back, or how do you see that playing off?
Well, you know what? I'm hoping that landlords are pretty lenient as far as timeframes and everything in that regard. I do see a lot of discussions, around whether some expenses are repairs or capital expenditures. But as far as enforcement, I'm hoping that everybody tries to work together. Like I mentioned earlier, there might be leases where you've lost your rights, but I think it would be not in a landlord's best interest not to try to work with the tenant.
Yeah, they always say it's better to try and talk and do something, work it out, than rather try and go to court or something like that, I think.
That's correct.
Given the consideration in the pandemic, I think everybody needs to be a bit understanding and considerate with all of this going on right now.
Yeah, I also want to just mention one more thing. Sorry, Gavin. you're going to need to give the landlord time. Okay, a lot of their staff has also been working from home, and there are a lot of things that there are a lot of delays in just doing their 2021 budgets. So when you're asking for expenses, you may have to be persistent, but expect it to take some time.
Yeah, I can see how that would happen correctly. And Michael, for anybody who's looking at this, if they want to get hold of you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Okay, I don't know, Gavin. Hopefully, if you can send them my email address or have them give me a call. I'll give you all my contact information, so that anyone, and I look forward to it. Like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years. I really enjoy doing it. I enjoy reading leases. I enjoy helping tenants, and I most enjoy, getting money back for them.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, Michael, we really appreciate you taking the time today out of your busy schedule to be on the show with us here. And I'm sure we'll be more than happy to bring you on in the future again. Maybe we might look at doing a TV series with you on lease forensics and what people should know, what they shouldn't know, and how to look at it, how to decipher it and stuff like that when going forward.
I'd be more than happy to go through a lot of other clauses that we didn't get a time to talk about today that are going to affect everybody. But I really appreciate this opportunity, and I would absolutely look forward to doing this again.
All right, Michael. Well, that's all the time we have for now, but I look forward to speaking to you again soon, and keep up the good work that you're doing.
Thanks, everybody. Read the lease. Take care.